Welcome, dear listeners, to the shadow behind you, where the veil between the living and the lingering thins to a whisper. I'm your guide through the darkened corridors of history, where forgotten bloodlines claw their way back from the grave. Cursed institutions whisper secrets in the dead of night, and vanishing families leave echoes that chill the soul. Tonight, we venture into the heart of the Ozark Mountains, that rugged labyrinth of mist-shrouded peaks and hollows so deep they swallow the sun. It's 1892, a time when the frontier's wild edge still bled with untamed mysteries, and we uncover the forbidden tale of the mountain witch. Shadows still haunt Black Hollow. Imagine, if you will, the Ozarks as they were then, a land of jagged limestone cliffs where rivers carve through stone like veins in a dying beast, and forests so dense they hold the breath of centuries.
Black Hollow, the name alone sends a shiver, doesn't it?
Nestled in the Missouri Ozarks, this forsaken valley was a place where light feared to tread. By day, it was a basin of perpetual twilight, hemmed in by towering bluffs that cast long, grasping shadows. By night, those shadows stirred, alive with something unnatural, something that watched from the underbrush with eyes like polished obsidian. The tale we're about to unravel has been buried for over a century, whispered only in the dim glow of kerosene lamps by those who dare remember. It's forbidden not because of mere superstition, but because speaking it aloud is said to summon the very shadows it describes. They say the mountain witch of Black Hollow was no mere hag from fairy tales, brewing potions in a cauldron. No, she was something far older, a remnant of the earth's primal fury, bound to the land by blood and betrayal. Her name was Alara Voss, though some claim it was stolen from the wind itself. Born of settler stock mingled with whispers of native blood. Perhaps Cherokee or Osage, she dwelt in a crumbling cabin at the Hollow's nadir, where the air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Picture this, it's early autumn 1892. The leaves are turning blood red, and the air carries the sharp tang of impending frost. A family arrives in the nearby settlement of Pine Ridge, drawn by promises of fertile land and untapped veins of lead in the hills. The patriarch Elias Harlan, a stern man with calloused hands from years in the mines, brings his wife, Abigail, and their 2 children, a boy of 12, Thomas, and a girl of 8, little Clara. They seek a new beginning, escaping the dust-choked factories of the East. But Black Hollow calls to them like a siren's song, its entrance a narrow gorge choked with briars and fallen boulders, as if the mountain itself guards its secrets. As the Harlans settle, strange omens begin. A milk cow dries up overnight, its udders withered like prunes. Birds fall silent in the woods, and at dusk, shadows detach from trees, slithering across paths like ink spilled from a quill. Elias dismisses it as frontier folly, but Abigail feels it in her bones, a presence. Watching, waiting. One evening, as the family gathers around their hearth, a knock echoes at the door. No one is there, only a bundle of twisted roots on the stoop, bound with hair that gleams unnaturally in the firelight. It's a warning, they say in hushed tones at the general store, from the Witch of the Hollow. Touch her domain, and the shadows will claim you. But why forbidden? Because this isn't just a ghost story. It's a curse woven into the fabric of the land. Locals spoke of vanishings, trappers who entered the hollow and emerged as hollow-eyed wraiths, babbling of shadows that whispered their sins. A preacher who ventured in to exorcise the evil, only to be found days later, his body unmarked but his shadow gone. Cast no more, even in brightest noon. And Alara, they called her the Mountain Witch for her knowledge of herbs that could heal or hex, for her eyes that pierced the soul, reflecting back the darkness within. As we delve deeper, feel the chill creep up your spine. The Ozarks have always been a cradle for the uncanny, where European settlers' old-world fears mingled with indigenous spirits of the land. In 1892, the world was changing, railroads snaking through the hills bringing progress. But Black Hollow resisted, a pocket of primordial dread. Tonight, we'll walk its paths, hear its whispers. But beware, once you know the tale, the shadows may follow you home. They say in Pine Ridge, even now, On moonless nights, figures move in the hollow, elongated and ethereal, seeking those who speak their name. Lean in closer, listeners. The fire crackles low, the wind howls outside. Let us begin the descent into Black Hollow, where the mountain witch awaits, and her shadows hunger still. The year was 1892, and the Ozark Mountains stood as eternal sentinels, their peaks cloaked in perpetual mist that clung like the breath of ghosts. Pine Ridge was a speck of civilization carved from the wilderness, a cluster of log cabins, a one-room church, and a general store where men traded tales as readily as tobacco. The air was thick with the scent of pine resin and wood smoke. But beneath it lurked something fouler, a metallic tang like blood on the tongue, wafting from the direction of Black Hollow. Elias Harlan arrived with the first frost, his wagon creaking under the weight of hopes and hardships. He was a broad-shouldered man of 40, his face etched with lines from Pennsylvania coal mines, where he'd buried friends under collapsing earth. Abigail, his wife, was a fragile beauty, her auburn hair tied back, eyes haunted by losses unspoken, a stillborn child, a fever that claimed her parents. Thomas, their son, was lanky and curious, with a mop of brown hair and a penchant for wandering the woods, collecting stones that gleamed like secrets. Little Clara was the light of their world, her laughter like bells, but she carried a frailty, a cough that rattled in her chest like dry leaves. They claimed a homestead on the hollow's edge, a plot of land with a bubbling spring and soil rich as chocolate. "This is our redemption," Elias declared, hammering stakes into the ground as the sun dipped low, casting elongated shadows that seemed to reach toward him. The neighbors warned them over shared cornbread and moonshine. Old man Wetacre, with his tobacco-stained beard and eyes like faded denim, leaned close. "Stay clear of the hollow, Harlan. That's Alara's domain. She's been there since before the war, some say. Touched by the devil or worse, the mountains themselves, Alara Voss. The name evoked shudders. Whispers painted her as a woman in her 50s, though time seemed to shun her. Tall and gaunt, with skin like weathered bark and hair black as raven feathers, streaked with silver that caught the moonlight. She lived in a cabin of moss-covered logs, surrounded by a garden of night, blooming flowers and herbs that twisted unnaturally. Folks said she spoke to animals, that owls perched on her shoulders like sentinels, and that she could weave spells from spider silk and dew. But it was the shadows that defined her legend. They said in Black Hollow, shadows didn't obey the sun. They danced to her whim, stretching, contracting, sometimes detaching to slink through the undergrowth like living smoke. The Harlans heeded the warnings at first. Elias focused on building their cabin, felling trees with rhythmic axe swings that echoed through the hills. Abigail tended a small garden, planting beans and corn, while Thomas explored the safer trails, bringing home wild berries that stained his fingers purple. Clara played with rag dolls, her imagination filling the air with innocent tales. But curiosity is an insidious vine, creeping where it's least welcome. It began with small disturbances. One morning, Elias found his tools rearranged, hammers and saws laid out in patterns resembling runes. "Animals," he muttered, but Abigail's face paled. That night, as the family supped on venison stew, a low moan echoed from the hollow, a sound like wind through bones. Clara whimpered, clutching her doll. "It's the witch, Mama. She's calling." Days turned to weeks, and the omens escalated. The spring's water turned brackish, tasting of iron. Crows gathered in the trees, their caws a mocking chorus. Thomas, venturing too close to the gorge, returned with tales of eyes in the dark, glowing faintly like embers in ash. Then came the dream. Abigail woke screaming, her nightgown soaked in sweat. She was here, she gasped to Elias. Alara, standing at the foot of the bed, her shadow stretching across the wall, whispering my name. Elias, ever the pragmatist, decided to confront the source. Armed with his rifle and a lantern, he descended into Black Hollow at dawn, the path winding like a serpent's spine. The air grew colder, heavier, laden with the rot of fallen leaves and something sweeter, nightshade, perhaps. Trees loomed, their branches interlaced like skeletal fingers, blocking the sky. Shadows pooled unnaturally, defying the morning light. He found the cabin in a clearing where fog lingered like a shroud. Smoke curled from the chimney, carrying the scent of burning sage. Elora emerged as if summoned, her dress a patchwork of hides and cloth, eyes piercing green like moss on stone. "You've come uninvited, miner," she said, her voice a rasp of wind through reeds. "The hollow doesn't welcome those who dig its bones." Elias stiffened. "We've no quarrel, just want peace. Folks say you're behind the strangeness." She laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "Strangeness? The land remembers. Harlan, your kind came with axes and greed, stripping the hills, awakening old spirits. I am but their guardian. The shadows, they are the echoes of the betrayed, the Osage driven out, the settlers who took too much. Cross me, and they'll claim you." He left unsettled, her words echoing in his mind. But greed whispered louder. Rumors spoke of silver in the hollow's depths, veins untouched. Elias confided in a few men from Pine Ridge, forming a small party to prospect. They entered under cover of night, picks glinting in moonlight. That's when the true horror began. As they dug, the ground trembled, shadows detached from rocks, coiling around legs like vines. One man, Jeb Turner, screamed as his shadow twisted, pulling him into the earth. They fled, but Jeb was gone, vanished without trace. Back in Pine Ridge, whispers turned to accusations. "The witch's curse," they said. For the Harlans, it worsened. Clara's cough deepened, her skin paling to translucence. Abigail found strange marks on the child's arms, bruises shaped like fingers. Thomas dreamed of Elara, her form dissolving into shadow, beckoning him. Elias, tormented, returned to the hollow alone, rifle raised. "What do you want?" he bellowed. Elara appeared, calm as death. "Balance, your family treads on sacred ground, leave, or the shadows will devour what you love." He fired a warning shot, the echo reverberating. But as he turned, his own shadow lagged, hesitating before following. The curse had begun. The curse tightened its grip like a noose in the weeks that followed, transforming Black Hollow from a mere shadow, haunted valley into a living nightmare. Elias Harlan returned from his confrontation with Elara Voss changed. His eyes hollowed, as if the darkness had sipped from his soul. He barred the doors at dusk, muttering prayers he half remembered from childhood. But prayers hold little sway in the Ozarks, where the land's ancient spirits laugh at such fragility. Abigail felt it first, a presence in the cabin's corners, where shadows gathered thicker than dust. She'd wake to find Clara standing, rigid eyes glassy, murmuring in a tongue unknown, words that slithered like serpents, evoking forgotten rituals. "She's in her," Abigail whispered to Elias one storm-lashed night, as rain hammered the roof like accusing fingers. The witch, using the child as a vessel. Thomas, the boy with the wandering spirit, became the unwitting bridge. Drawn by an invisible thread, he slipped into the hollow under moonlight, the path illuminated by phosphorescent fungi that pulsed like heartbeats. He found Elara by her fire, stirring a pot that bubbled with iridescent liquid. "Why us?" he asked, voice trembling yet defiant. Elara's gaze softened, a flicker of humanity in the storm. "Not you, child. Your father's greed. The mountains bleed from his kind's wounds, mine scarring the earth, awakening the shades. I was once like you, innocent, until betrayal bound me here." She revealed her tale. Born in 1840 to a Cherokee mother and German settler father, Elara learned the old ways. Herbs for healing, champs to commune with spirits. But in 1862, during the Civil War's chaos, bushwhackers raided her village, killing her family. She fled to Black Hollow, where she struck a pact with the land's guardians, shadow entities, remnants of displaced tribes, and vengeful nature spirits. In exchange for her service, they granted her power, but at a cost: eternal vigilance, her life woven into the hollow's fabric. "The shadows are hungry," she warned Thomas. "They feed on regret, on the darkness in men's hearts. Your father digs too deep." Thomas returned home, but the shadows followed. That night, as the family slept, they stirred. Elias awoke to a chill, seeing his shadow rise from the floor, elongating into a humanoid form. It whispered his sins, the brother he'd abandoned in the mines, the lies to Abigail about their fortunes. He swung at it with a poker, but it dissolved, reforming to clutch at Clara's bed. The girl screamed, her small body convulsing as if unseen hands pulled her strings. Panic gripped Pine Ridge. A posse formed, led by the preacher, Reverend Hale, a fire and brimstone man with a Bible scarred from travels. They marched into the hollow at noon, when shadows were shortest, chanting hymns to ward off evil. Elara met them at her threshold unflinching. "Fools," she intoned. "The hollow claims its own." Chaos erupted. As the men advanced, shadows surged from the trees, dark tendrils that wrapped around limbs, dragging victims into underbrush. Reverend Hale fired his pistol, the shot echoing, but a shadow engulfed him, his cries muffled as if swallowed by void. Only half the posse escaped, babbling of living darkness that tasted their fears. Elias, guilt-ridden, confessed to Abigail. "I sought silver, thinking it our salvation, but I've doomed us." Together, they resolved to appease the witch. With Thomas as guide, they entered the hollow at twilight, carrying offerings, bread baked with herbs, a lock of Clara's hair, and Elias's mining tools as symbols of surrender. Elara awaited, her form silhouetted against a bonfire that cast writhing shadows. "You come too late," she said, sorrow etching her features. "The curse is loosed, but perhaps mercy for the innocent." She performed a ritual, chanting in a mime language of Cherokee and English, her hands weaving patterns in the air. Smoke rose, forming shapes, faces of the lost, eyes pleading. Clara weakened, collapsed, her shadow detaching briefly, dancing with Elara's. The witch absorbed it, her own form flickering. But betrayal lurked. Unbeknownst to the Harlans, survivors from the posse trailed them, seeking vengeance. As the ritual peaked, shots rang out. A bullet struck Elara in the chest, blood blooming like a dark flower. She fell, but her eyes blazed. "The shadows? Eternal?" she gasped. In that moment hell unfurled. Shadows exploded from her body, a torrent of inky blackness that engulfed the attackers. Screams pierced the night as men were pulled apart, their forms dissolving into wisps. Elias shielded his family, but Clara was touched. Her shadow twisted, merging with the chaos. They fled as the hollow convulsed, trees bending, ground rumbling. Back in the cabin, Clara lay still, breathing shallow. But her shadow, it moved independently, slinking across walls, whispering Elara's final words. "The betrayed shall haunt." In the aftermath, Pine Ridge withered. Families vanished, leaving empty homes where shadows lingered unnaturally. Elias, broken, led his kin away, but Clara never recovered fully, her cough a constant, her eyes distant. Thomas carried the tale, forbidding its retelling, lest the shadows stir. Yet they do. In Black Hollow, Elara's cabin stands ruined, but on certain nights her form appears, woven from shadow, guarding the land's wounds. To truly grasp the chilling essence of the forbidden tale of the Mountain Witch, we must delve into the real history and folklore of the Ozark Mountains, a region steeped in eerie authenticity that blurs the line between fact and phantom. The Ozarks, spanning Missouri, Arkansas, and parts of Oklahoma and Kansas, were a frontier crucible in 1892, a time of transition where old-world superstitions collided with the encroaching iron of progress. Let's peel back the layers, listeners, and uncover the unsettling truths that lend our narrative its haunting weight. First, consider the landscape itself. A karst topography of caves, springs, and hollows like Black Hollow, which, while fictionalized here, echoes real places such as Devil's Den or Roaring River Hollow, where shadows indeed play tricks due to the jagged terrain and dense canopies. In 1892, the Ozarks were booming with lead and zinc mining, drawing settlers like Elias Harlan. Historical records from the era, including the Marshall Mountain Wave newspaper, founded that year, detail the farmers' alliances and mining rushes that scarred the hills, much as our story describes. These mines weren't just economic ventures. They were seen as violations of the earth, awakening spirits in local lore. The cultural tapestry of the Ozarks was woven from diverse threads. Scotch-Irish settlers bringing Celtic fairy tales of witches and banshees, German immigrants with their hex signs and folk magic, and indigenous peoples like the Osage and Cherokee, whose forced removals in the 1830s left a legacy of spectral resentment. Elara Voss embodies this fusion, a granny witch, archetype common in Ozark and Appalachian folklore. Folklorist Vance Randolph, born in 1892, ironically documented such figures in works like Ozark Magic and Folklore 1947, describing witch women who used dolls of dirt and beeswax for curses, much like the bundles in our tale. Randolph noted beliefs in shapeshifters, ghosts and haints, restless spirits that haunted hollows. Witchcraft in the Ozarks wasn't the dramatic trials of Salem, it was subtle. Everyday hoodoo. Superstitions abounded. To ward off witches, hang horseshoes or place brooms behind doors. Mirrors could trap shadows, preventing hauntings. Curses involved witch balls, glass orbs to deflect evil, or tying knots in hair for binding spells. The Bell Witch legend from nearby Tennessee influenced Ozark tales, with its poltergeist torments mirroring our shadow hauntings. Randolph collected stories of witches controlling animals or weather, and one chilling account of a woman whose shadow went a-wandering, leaving her body vulnerable. Hauntings and shadows held particular dread. In Ozark superstitions, shadows represented the soul's dark twin. Losing one's shadow meant death or damnation. Tales of shadow people, or black walkers, persist. Entities born from trauma like the Civil War bushwhacker raids that ravaged the region in the 1860s. In 1892, the Ozarks were still healing from such violence, with ghost towns and abandoned homesteads fueling legends of vanishing families. Cultural practices added eeriness. Yarb doctors or healers used herbs like nightshade and mandrake, blending native knowledge with European alchemy. Alara's garden reflects this. Real Ozark witches employed sassafras for purification or Jimson weed for visions, but misuse led to madness. Folklore warned of witches' covens in remote hollows, as in a 19th-century tale of a coven near Devil's Elbow, where witches danced with shadows under full moons. Broader context, 1892, saw the founding of the American School of Osteopathy in Kirksville, Missouri, blending science and mysticism, echoing the era's tension between rationality and the supernatural. Railroads pierced the isolation, but hollows remained pockets of antiquity where oral traditions preserved forbidden knowledge. Indigenous legends, like Osage stories of underworld spirits emerging from caves, infused settler fears, creating hybrid myths of land guardians cursing intruders. This blend of fact and folklore creates unsettling authenticity. Real vanishings occurred. Trappers lost in caves, miners in collapses, attributed to curses. Even today, Ozark festivals celebrate this heritage with storytelling sessions, but elders warn, speak of witches, and they listen. Our tale draws from these roots, amplifying the dread of isolation, where shadows aren't mere absence of light, but presences waiting to consume. As we transition, remember, the Ozarks' history isn't just past, it's alive, whispering through the trees. Now, listeners, as the embers of our narrative glow low, let us probe deeper into the symbolic and psychological undercurrents of the forbidden tale of the Mountain Witch. This isn't mere entertainment. It's a mirror to universal fears, cultural traumas, and the shadowy recesses of human nature. With an ominous lens, we'll dissect how this story resonates, leaving us haunted by its implications. At its core, the tale explores isolation as both physical and existential dread. The Ozarks' hollows symbolize the psyche's hidden depths, places where societal norms dissolve and primal instincts surface. Black Hollow represents the collective unconscious, a dungeon shadow realm where repressed elements manifest. Elara Voss embodies the anima, the feminine archetype marginalized by patriarchal settlers. Her witchery challenges the male-dominated mining culture of 1892, reflecting historical suppression of women's knowledge. Healers labeled witches, their power feared as unnatural. This connects to universal fears of the other, where the empowered woman becomes monstrous, a theme echoing in global folklore from Baba Yaga to La Llorona. The shadows themselves are potent symbols, metaphors for guilt and the unspoken past. In our story, they detach and haunt, embodying Freud's uncanny, familiar yet alien. Elias's shadow whispering sins illustrates how personal darkness pursues us, a psychological projection of regret. Culturally, this ties to Ozark trauma. The shadows evoke the Trail of Tears, displacements where indigenous spirits linger as accusatory presences. The curse as nature's revenge highlights ecological themes, mining as violation, awakening earthbound furies. In an era of industrialization, this warns of hubris, a motif in environmental horror like Lovecraft's cosmic indifference, but rooted in folk realism. Thematically, the narrative delves into inheritance and forbidden knowledge. The forbidden tale motif suggests that some truths are too corrosive to utter, akin to Pandora's box. Speaking, it summons shadows, mirroring how cultural traumas, slavery, war, displacement, fester when silenced. For the Harlans, the curse passes generationally, symbolizing how parental sins burden children, a universal human plight. Clara's affliction represents innocence corrupted, her shadow's independence a loss of self, evoking dissociation in trauma psychology. Human nature's duality shines through Elias's greed versus Elara's guardianship. This binary explores ambition's cost, where progress devours tradition. Ozark folklore, as per Randolph, portrays witches as ambiguous, helpers or hexers, reflecting moral ambiguity. Elara's pact with spirits underscores bargains with the unknown, a Faustian theme linking to cultural fears of selling one's soul for power. Psychologically, the story taps into fear of the unknown, amplified by sensory immersion. The metallic tang, whispering winds, slithering shadows appeal to primal senses, triggering the amygdala's fight or flight. It connects to biophobia, innate dread of wild places, but inverts it. The hollow isn't empty, it's teeming with watchful entities. Broader connections to cultural trauma, like the American frontier myth masking genocide and exploitation. Elara's mixed heritage symbolizes hybrid identities erased by assimilation, her curse a reclamation. Universally, it echoes fears of retribution, climate change as modern shadows, haunting industrial sins. In an ominous tone, this analysis reveals the tale's power. It doesn't just scare, it indicts, forcing us to confront our own shadows. What forbidden knowledge do you harbor, listener? Speak it and see what stirs. As our journey through Black Hollow draws to a close, the chill lingers, doesn't it? The fire dims, shadows lengthen across your room, and perhaps, just perhaps, you feel a gaze upon your back. The forbidden tale of the Mountain Witch isn't confined to 1892, its echoes reverberate through time, a curse unbound by speaking its name. We've traversed the mist-shrouded paths, witnessed Elara Voss's fall, and felt the shadow's cold embrace. Elias Harlan fled with his fractured family, but the hollow claimed pieces of their souls. Clara's laughter forever muted, Thomas's eyes eternally watchful. Pine Ridge faded into obscurity, its remnants swallowed by vines, but locals swear on autumn eves. When leaves bleed red, elongated figures dance in the valley, whispering invitations to the unwary. What lingers most is the question, was Elara villain or victim? A witch wielding darkness, or a guardian avenging the land's wounds? The Ozarks hold no easy answers. Their secrets burrow deep like roots in stone. Perhaps the shadows still haunt because we too dig where we shouldn't, plundering earth, ignoring the past's pleas. Dear listeners, as you turn off the light, remember shadows are patient. They wait in corners, feeding on your doubts. If you feel a breath on your neck, a whisper in the dark, well, maybe it's just the wind. Or maybe it's Elara, reminding us that some tales should remain forbidden. Until next time, on the shadow behind you, watch the darkness. It watches back.